Well, hi to my YouTube subscribers. Well, this video isn't about visas, but I hope you'll watch it anyway. I wanted to let you know that the audiobook of my novel, Slaughtering Girl, is now available on Audible.com, and I hope you'll buy it. Now, Kathleen Strecker, the narrator, has done an absolutely wonderful job of bringing the book and all the characters to life. Slaughtering Girl is the story of a girl born in China in the final years of the last Chinese dynasty. Now, under the guidance of her grandmother, she's recognized as a prodigy in the art of slaughtering fowl, and she performs all over China. Slaughtering Girl is an epic love story, but it also tells the story of modern China, from the fall of the Qing dynasty through the rise of communism and the rise of China as an economic power under Deng Xiaoping. The story says a great deal about love, war, politics, and human destiny. So I hope you'll join in this adventure of the Slaughtering Girl. Slaughtering Girl can be purchased on Audible.com, and I'll put a link in the description of this video describing how you can buy the book. And I'll end with some excerpts from the book so you can get an idea of what it's like. So thanks for listening, and please consider buying a copy of the book. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.
"I've something new to show you," said the Slaughtering Girl. She stood on the platform, speaking as comfortably to the crowd of several hundred as if she was talking to a single person. She had just passed her 13th birthday and now stood nearly 7 chi in height. The onlookers could see how broad her shoulders had grown, but what they could not see, hidden beneath her robe, were thighs thick as logs and knotted with muscle. There were other changes. Once her long limbs had given the girl a certain gangling appearance. Now, as she'd grown older, all of her pieces settled into more regular proportions. Her milk rooms grew firm and womanly. Her long white neck lent her a certain regal quality, like a proud swan floating on a lake. Her face, once round, had lengthened, the bones of her cheeks and jaw pushed outward. Li Chuan had just completed the slaughtering demonstration. She was sweating from the exertion and from the heat of the sun. Her robe was spattered with fresh blood. She lifted a large watermelon from the table where the props were kept and set it down near the front of the platform. Then she lifted her robe to reveal a pair of loose trousers beneath. Li Chuan smiled at the crowd, then sat on the edge of the platform. She placed the watermelon between her thighs. "I don't know if I can do it," she said. "What do you think?" No one in the crowd had ever heard of this being done. People shouted back their opinions. The crowd was split on the question. The Slaughtering Girl's face was lined with concentration as she pressed her legs together. Then she stopped. The crowd went dead quiet. "This is difficult," she said. "I need encouragement." The onlookers went wild with their screams as the Slaughtering Girl's thighs squeezed the melon. She grunted and strained. Her face, normally porcelain white, turned red, and lines appeared on her forehead. She closed her eyes. Several times she stopped as the fruit would simply not give way. A communal groan rose from the crowd. The 4th time she tried, she left nothing in reserve. An animal cry rose in her throat, and very suddenly the fruit exploded, covering those near the platform with juice, pulp, and seeds. This finale left her so drained that she had to take a few minutes to recover before beginning to sign scrolls. Li Chuan found the new demonstration satisfying in a way that was difficult to articulate. The transition from intense straining to the sudden explosion of the fruit between her legs produced a profound sensation of relief and release, a rush of pleasure that raced through her body. Even with the intense effort required to perform the trick, the Slaughtering Girl found herself looking forward to the finale of each show. The teacher watched the column of Qing troops advance across the bridge, the soldiers stepping on and over corpses. Teacher Li did not hesitate. He set down the candle and the bamboo bomb and grabbed an oil lamp that was burning nearby. "Take this," he told Bright Jewel, handing her the lamp. and follow me." The teacher raced to the rickshaw that stood closest to the approaching Qing column. He gripped the bars, but instead of pulling the vehicle, he pushed it. Perhaps the Qing had been surprised to see the rickshaw moving towards them because their firing did not begin immediately. After the first shot, however, it was as if every gun in the Qing army had sounded at once. The teacher pushed with all his strength, ignoring the stinging pain of bullets striking his legs. When he could no longer stand, he let the momentum of the heavily laden cart pull him forward. By the time the Qing troops had stopped the cart, it was too late. Bright Jewel, running just behind him, had already tossed the lamp of burning oil onto the pile of bamboo bombs. She fell on the planking of the bridge next to the teacher. Teacher Li hoped that Mrs. Chen would understand that he'd done the best he could. The dignified stranger carried a leather case held by a strap looped over his shoulder. He wore a black robe of good quality silk, but it bore no official insignia. "I'm not from the post," said the man. Li Chuan had been sitting at the shop counter, her head bent, working mathematics problems. She hadn't bothered to change from her blood-spattered work robe. Her hair was pinned up. She'd now grown accustomed to wearing it that way. Mrs. Chen slept on a mat that she'd unrolled on the floor behind the slaughtering bench. "Who's awakened me?" she called out. "I beg your pardon," said the stranger, peering around the room to find the source of Mrs. Chen's disembodied voice. "We're closed," Li Chuan explained. "We reopen at 5:30. She'd been working diligently to finish the last of the 9 chapters on the mathematical arts, wanting to complete her study before the teacher returned. "You'll have customers when you reopen," the man said. "I hope so," she replied, not looking up from the papers. "But I wish to speak with you privately." "Ask him what he wants," Mrs. Chen interjected. Li Chuan returned the ink pen to its stand and rose to her feet. This was a man of some experience, but he was now awed as if he'd seen an Arabian jinn arise from a bottle. The slaughtering girl was far lovelier than the picture on the scroll, and she towered above the man. The styling of her hair added several inches to her already ample height. He bowed deeply. She offered a nod. "My grandmother wants to know what it is you want." "I'm Guo, an emissary of Huang Jimei." Mrs. Chen now sat up on her mat. She and Li Chuan looked at each other. Neither recognized the name. "Perhaps you've heard of the Iron Warlord?" They hadn't. It wasn't so surprising. There were now as many warlords in China as flies. The visitor unslung the leather bag from his shoulder, reached in, and after a moment of searching, removed a photograph. He handed it to Mrs. Chen. It showed a handsome man of about 30, dressed in a Western-style military uniform. The woman squinted at the picture and then passed it to her granddaughter. "A soldier," she said to Li Chuan with a dismissive huff. Mrs. Chen didn't have a high opinion of soldiers.